Please welcome Mashable founder and CEO Pete Cashmore and Lisa Jackson, Vice President of Environment, Policy, and Social Initiatives at Apple.
Wow.
Big
I don't know how we top Biden on that. So, well, Lisa, why don't you tell us iPhone 8, what's in it?
What?
A lot of people know you from, you work at Apple and you headed the EPA previously.
I did.
But a lot of people don't know you have degrees in chemical engineering. You have an amazing personal story. Could you just give us a little bit of background on your personal story before we get started?
Yeah, nice and quick. I am a chemical engineer by training. Grew up in New Orleans, Ninth Ward. My mom lived there till the hurricane. She lost her home, like so many. And I grew up really good in math and science and wanting to be a doctor. And I tell people all the time that, especially when I'm talking to young women about STEAM, about engineering and technology and math, that you don't have to think of being a doctor or helping people, reaching into people's lives on a sort of personal level. You can do that in other ways other than being a doctor. So I don't think it's an accident that eventually, after I went to school and changed over to engineering, I found myself drawn to the environmental field. And I don't think it's an accident that I finally ended up at EPA, because the mission of EPA is protection of human health and the environment, both together. But it's been a wonderful journey towards realizing that the environment is probably in some ways the greatest sort of medicine for our planet and our people.
And what advice would you give for people that are looking to pursue that similar career path? Because I know a lot of people in the audience are doing similar things.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Number one, the science part of it. People think of the environment and they talk about environmental policy, but a lot of what we do at the EPA, a lot of certainly what we do now at Apple, is pretty technically focused. It's driven. I use the engineering, not every day like the Apple engineers do, but I do use it. So try to dig in early in your career and get some expertise, some field work behind you doing something in the field if you possibly can, and then move over to policy. That was the path that worked for me. I also think starting with public service, I was almost 25 years in public service, and then moving to the private sector is lovely, but not absolutely mandatory. There's a lot of cutbacks in public service hiring these days. So I speak to a lot of students who say, is it okay if I don't start in public service? I'm like, no, absolutely you can. And you can do public service even sometimes at a private corporation.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Why did you transition from the EPA over to Apple? Is there, do you think you can make more of a difference? Is it a different way that you can affect the world?
Yeah, absolutely you can. I did the first Obama administration as head of the EPA. So I really do believe that it was time. You sort of set out to do a few things. For me, the endangerment finding, the finding that carbon and other pollutants were endangering human health and is the basis for all of the regulatory work that's happened around climate change. That was one of our big accomplishments. We put a lot of time focusing on environmental justice, on the idea that the populations who are poorest, people of color, in this country but around the world, are often the ones who are exposed to environmental pollution, who can least afford to have a political voice or an economic voice. We did the clean car rules the first round when I was administrator. So you sort of look at that and you say, okay, now it's someone else's turn. So when it got time to go, I thought about the places I wanted to go, and I knew I didn't want to trade in service. I still wanted to work on my passion, which is the environment. And I wanted to go somewhere that would have real reach and influence. And when I thought about it, there was really only one place I wanted to go, and that was Apple.
Going to Apple, building the electric car. Confirmed.
So I'd like to stay at Apple.
What you are doing at Apple is 100% renewable campaign. Can you talk a little bit about Renewables, what the basis is for that campaign, what you guys are in this week talking about?
Yeah, so we're 93% renewably powered around the world. So people hear that and they go, well, what does that mean? So Apple has offices and research labs. Apple has retail stores, and Apple has data centers. That's where all the data, when you do a FaceTime video chat or you use Siri, you send an iMessage, all those electrons go to computers and data centers. All of those in the United States, in China, and 21 other countries run on clean energy. So we're 100% renewably powered here in the US and China and in 21 other countries. We're 93% renewably powered worldwide. Today we announced that we were joining RE100, the Renewable Energy 100, and I kind of like it because it's sort of like joining to get 100 on the test when you're already at a 93. You know, we're going to get there, but the thing that I really like is that at Apple, we look at our carbon footprint comprehensively. So it's not just Apple, it's all of our suppliers, and we have hundreds of them around the world. So our commitment in joining RE100 is to work on the supply chain part of clean energy. We already have, I think we're up to 4 suppliers. We announced 2 new ones today. We have a commitment from, Lens, from Foxconn, and from Ketcher and then Ketcher's setting a target to get there by 2020 to 100% renewable. The others are making firm commitments to do it by 2020 as well. And Solvay, I can never remember what Solvay calls themselves, Polychemicals or Solvay Chemicals out of Belgium. They're committing to do 100% renewable at their 8 countries, 14 factories.
So what do they make in our devices? They make the plastics?
They make that antenna band that goes around the back so you can get Wi-Fi and all the wonderful services that you get. Lens makes the glass for the display. Ketcher makes the aluminum enclosure, sort of the back of the phone. And of course, Foxconn does what we call final assembly, putting all the pieces together into not just phones, but iPads.
So when you talk about what are your renewable energy sources that Apple's using?
So we use solar, but we're not, only solar. We have some wind. We have one of my favorite projects, a micro hydro project in Oregon to help contribute to renewables at our data center there, which is hydropower but doesn't involve any damming of waterways. So none of the destruction of impounding, but all of the energy that you can get from the natural movement of water from a high place to a low place. So solar, wind, and we do use some fuel cells, but fuel cells, if you know anything about them, they run on natural gas. But the only natural gas that's considered renewable around the world is biogas. So we actually make sure that those run on biogas when we use fuel cells.
Right. And why is that important? Is this something that comes from the top that Tim says we need to get to 100% renewables? Like, what is, so that's the pressure on you then, huh? But like, why is it important to Apple? Don't you sell as many phones if you're renewable or not? Is the consumer aware? Are they connected to it?
I think our customers care. I think our customers expect, first from Apple, they expect, whiz-bang innovation. They expect to be surprised and delighted at how it works. But more and more, our customers are saying, we also care how you get to that wonderful device that I use and expect from Apple. So, to some degree, Tim says that our job is to leave the world better than we found it, so environment fits squarely in there. But he also says, listen, when you're as big as we are, we need to be a ripple in the pond. So it's fine to go 100% renewable at your own facilities, but what if we bring along our supply chain? Suddenly those manufacturing facilities are able to run on renewable as well. It's part of our responsibility, part of our values.
You're involved at Apple and there's a wider social good mandate. Can you speak a little bit about some of the things beyond renewables, sustainability? What else is Apple up to?
Apple's up to quite a bit. Apple is, I went there with the title of environment. About a year ago, I took on the title of environment and government affairs, and then we tacked on social initiatives. But I kept environment first because, you got to follow your passion, right? But the social initiative covers some of the other things Apple is really passionate about. Education. We had our start in education really in many ways with the personal computer and the Mac. And always believe that if you could empower kids and adults to learn, you give them the power to change the world for the better. At its most fundamental, that's what our products do. Accessibility. Apple is known in many communities of people who have physical disabilities, people who have learning challenges, neurodiversity. People find our products as making technology accessible to them and not blocking them out. And so we've sort of put an emphasis lately on blowing our horn a little bit in that space, not like look at us, but because really the idea of technology is it should be for everyone. There should be no digital divide amongst any people, and certainly not people who have a disability. And then we work on inclusion and diversity, a huge topic not only in Silicon Valley, but I think in general around technology and many sort of high-tech industries. We work on privacy. Somewhat famously fighting for privacy for our customers this past year, but really a value of the company that goes way back into the software, which is where it comes from. And then, of course, working on our supply chain, labor and environmental standards in our supply chain, and clean energy sort of comes on top of that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about ConnectEd? You mentioned the education program.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so ConnectEd is 114 schools across the United States only at this point, where I like to think that we sort of adopted them. We ran a grant program, so these are some of the most under-resourced schools in our country. They turn out to be over 90% kids of color. They're in 23 different states. We're actually going to have a rollout on Thursday here in the New York City public school system. Those kids, every kid gets an iPad. It's a wonderful, wonderful day. Every teacher gets an iPad and a MacBook. The classrooms get an Apple TV. But what they really get
Do you get to run in and say, you get an iPad?
They actually go through the line
Look
like
under
the
your
first
seats,
day. Now, we've had some pretty interesting reaction from kids because they just open it, right? They just see start. The teachers are the ones who are like, okay, can you help me out here? How do we teach with this? And I think that's actually really important because it's not just about giving technology or connecting somebody to the internet. It's about, challenge-based learning. How do these young people take that device and really start to teach themselves how to solve the problems that their teachers are putting before them? So it comes with training. And it comes with support for the school district as well.
Fantastic. I know we're a little tight on time. Can you just tell us where people can go if they want to find out more about all those initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. www.apple.com. First go to apple.com/environment.
Just open
Then
Safari.
go /connected, /accessibility, /supplier responsibility, /inclusion diversity. But apple.com. You get it? It's kind of gets a pattern. But I do hope people will go because every year around Earth Day, for example, we make a really big deal of talking about the things we're doing, not just because we want people to know, it's nice, but so much of changing our climate, of changing education is about people getting engaged and deciding how to use this technology to make the world better. And so what we really want people to understand is that whether you're buying an app or a download that's participating in an environmental challenge, whatever you might be doing, there at apple.com you can find out how to do it for yourself.
Perfect. Lisa Jackson, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.